Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for the DX version of Super X10 Tyrannus. Here's a size comparison. Okay, and here's a close-up of his head, and like the other figures in this line and Biclons, Metallions, it has just a blank black face with these blue eyes, and he's got like a Centurion helmet, which is really cool with the crest on top. So overall, I really like the design of this robot. He's got a Roman Centurion vibe. He's got like this Roman gladius kind of sword. The sword is kind of terrible on the other side. It's just hollow, unfortunately. But overall, the look of the robot is really good. It's got very little kibble because the tail just becomes this huge shield, and the shield looks really good. And overall, everything just fits together really well. The T-Rex elements are really well mixed in there. So for this robot mode, I'd rate this guy a 10. He looks really cool. And the fact that he looks like a Roman soldier is pretty awesome too. And then as for the shield, it doesn't really do anything. It just clips onto the arm with this plastic clip right here, which is clear plastic, so that's something to keep in mind. And it clips in right here on the forearm. So you're not going to get a lot of movement out of this. Like, you can basically only hold it like this. And this guy has a lot of limited articulation in the first place. The shield does have these handles, but this is for like a combined weapon mode with some of the other figures that I don't have. So this doesn't actually do anything useful. It would be nice if this could store on his back, and then the sword could just slide in this part here. Yeah, it would be good if he had that kind of weapon storage and you could just store everything on his back to give him hands-free mode. Or if this could become like a sheath he could wear on his hip, but it doesn't really do that, unfortunately. So as far as articulation goes, he does have these 45-degree shoulders. So it gives him kind of an awkward forward punch. But he can pull that off, and then it's especially weird if you're trying to put his arm over his head because it's 45 degrees, so now things get very strange. So that's not terribly useful. He doesn't have any head articulation for some reason. He can't rotate his head. It's probably be pretty simple to just... Nope. I thought there'd be a screw down here you could just unscrew and shave off a notch, but it doesn't look like it. It's all one solid piece. So he does have bicep swivel, so that's nice. You don't see that in most Korean robots. So that's some articulation he has that most robots don't. He does have an elbow bend that's more than 90 degrees. Nothing in the fist. So you can get some decent arm articulation here, which is important because he has a sword. And then he does have rotating waist, which is part of the transformation. He does have full forward kick, 90 degrees. The backward kick is hampered, so he's only going to get about this far back. And then he does have, oh, and the outward motion on the shoulder is weird on this shoulder. It only goes outward this much, so that's limited, but this shoulder has a good amount of outward motion, and these don't come up at all, so that's as far outward as his hand can go. So this arm's only going to go out this far. So you can get a full sideways kick as well. And then he does have about that much on the knee, which is almost 90 degrees. And then he does have these weird joints down here, which don't accomplish anything in robot mode or his alt mode. So these joints down here are kind of pointless. For both modes, he always has to have it at this angle. Like if you try to straighten these out, the knee doesn't bend forward any further, so he can't stand on his foot like this. I guess you can use it for posing, but it's a shame they put the articulation here because it's pretty useless. They could have put that articulation somewhere else. It would have been better. But yeah, that's how he looks. And of course, this is a Youngtoys product, so it does feel a 10 out of 10 in hand. It feels rock solid. Really good hand feel, so good quality. And then his Pentex does pop out because this is like the role-playing gimmick that you use for, I don't know, a watch or something. And then when you rotate it, it does switch to his dyno mode. So you actually really, when you transform this guy, you actually leave it in his chest, and it kind of rotates on its own as you transform him. So transformation is really simple on this guy. You do just open up his back panel here, and then his head's attached there. You're going to rotate that in, put that back in his chest. And then, well actually, the transformation on this guy is pretty difficult. I forgot, or I had to look at the directions because I missed a step that was really important. And then his whole waist panel here is going to detach. And then there's a panel on the shoulder here that you can get ready. And then this arm is going to rotate all the way around, and it's going to nicely nest into the shoulder armor. And then you rotate the hips, or the waist, one direction, and then you're going to rotate this all the way up. And if you did it correctly, this tab will slot into the bottom, into his armpit. So I did it the wrong way, so I have to rotate this the opposite direction. And this tab will clip right into his armpit, and that gets nice and snug in there. And then there's this black little indent that nests this forearm into. So far it looks like everything's pretty straightforward. You would think you maybe fold these legs down and make the legs, but the part that I was missing was you do have to turn him upside down to activate his gimmick, and then you rotate this whole section. And then this arm is going to fold up here, and then you have like a visible hand, but that's going to be covered by this shoulder panel. Okay, so that cleans that up pretty well. And then you have, of course, his little dino arms. And then you're going to rotate these at a second joint in the thigh, like above the knee. So the thigh is going to stick straight out and then break in half, basically. And that's going to make the dino legs. And then finally, you just bring the claws down, or next to finally. And then you can see in the dino mode, it still doesn't make sense to straighten these out. It's not going to look right. That looks pretty weird. So it's got to have that bend in there. And then finally, the hardest part is getting this shield in place. So you're going to open this up, and you have to, this clips into the forearm again, and this is going to clip into this black panel up here. So you want it to be like this. And actually, let me turn this around. So you want to line up this hole with this peg basically, and this clip is going to line up with this forearm clip on the opposite side. Okay, and everything's clipped in place, and you have to do it this way with the sword first, because when you sandwich this together, the sword is going to get in the way if the sword is in the half that you're hinging. And then basically there's his, I guess this is a T-Rex. It looks, the straight tail makes me think a lot of a raptor, and especially, I don't know, something about his form doesn't look like a T-Rex to me for some reason. And then his little claws are just sadly, terribly tiny. This body shape is just a really, not a very menacing looking T-Rex. And of course he can open and shut his mouth, which is very nice. And it's got really nicely done teeth in there. And then he can like move this leg forward if he's doing like some kind of running pose. So maybe then you'd straighten it out, I guess. That can help him balance. But the forearms are just a little bit too tiny to me. They should have made those bigger, because it just looks like they're not even there. Here's how he looks with Dragonius and Whitehorn. And a standard deluxe transformer. He looks pretty good. I think that's a pretty good scale for a car. Okay, one more. So this is how big he is with a leader class figure. He's about the same size. I can't say I really like this alt mode. It's too cute, I guess. It's kind of a, I don't know, it's a 7. It's okay. But if you really like this figure, I highly recommend it. It's pretty fun. The transformation is really fun, and it's very simple, and it's just something you can just transform back and forth without thinking about it. So I ordered mine from Sirtoys. I'll leave a link in the description and a link to all of my sales and things I need to get rid of.